Hi there. Thanks for joining us on Let's Talk Taste with Sherry, where we're saving the earth one flavor at a time by gathering community to share wisdom around the natural connections between our innate sense of taste and flavors that are grown in healthy regenerative soils. Welcome. Hey there, Sherry Hess with the Flavor Remedy. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk Taste with Sherry. Today, I want to touch on kind of a buzzword that's going around today, but it's so powerful and so juicy that it's very, very appropriate to bring it into the conversation around flavor. And that word is diversity. Okay, so let's just talk about diversity in general, right? Diversity just means, incorporating a lot of different things, bringing a lot of different aspects into things, right? Looking at things through different races, economic backgrounds, political views. There's so many different ways that you can look at just the word diversity, right? To me, the word diversity equals interesting. It just equals this, more varied, more open-minded way of looking at things. Like if you just allow your mind to open up to new ideas. One of my least favorite things in the world, and one of my least favorite traits that you sometimes come across in people in general, is this closed-mindedness, right? Not willing to look at things in a different view. And I get it. I understand why people are that way, because you've either been ingrained with it your whole life, or there's just different, we know what we know. And until we know better, we don't do better. But allowing your mind to be open to different possibilities just, I think, enhances the world. If you think about a rainbow, right? Looking at a rainbow with all the colors at one time is so much more powerful than just looking at each individual color on its own, right? We always get excited when we see a prism, or when we see something a little bit, more sparkly, more colorful, more interesting, right? So, and then, in my world, where I'm talking about regenerative soils, and I'm talking about looking at nutrition through the eyes of flavor and the health of a human being, the term that comes up a lot is biodiversity, right? So in biodiversity, what regenerative farmers are striving for, what has become lacking in our soils is biodiversity of nutrients, right? We've gotten to this place where our agricultural business is so reliant on the production of, like, the specific minerals that are in fertilizer to make something grow, is producing a plant that grows, but the diversity of that plant is very different than when it was growing in biodiverse soils, right? So we're looking at technology, and we're looking at ways of going back to bringing this biodiversity back to the land, right? And you may have heard in conversations around your microbiome, right? If you're talking about your personal health, you're talking about your own gut, your microbiome. Maybe you've heard about this, through the lens of having to take a probiotic. Maybe you've heard about this through the lens of, if you're given an antibiotic, maybe someone tells you that you're supposed to eat yogurt so that you keep your healthy biology in your stomach healthy, right? To counteract the antibiotic that's killing biology in your body, right? And I think in the world of pharmacy, in medical science, there's advances in, now they'll look at the type of infection that you have, and they'll give you a more specific antibiotic. So it's not necessarily just killing everything in your microbiome, right? But if you're living in the health world, that there is conversation around diversity in your gut, right? So diversity just makes a more beautiful world. And if you look at the parts of the planet where we're kind of removing diversity, where we're cutting down rainforests to plant, trees that produce palm oil, and the lungs of our planet are dying because of it, right? We're using these kind of monetary demands and these trendy, for lack of a better word, ingredients, and we're kind of destroying the planet for the sake of it, right? So the biodiversity is being taken away, and it's affecting animals, it's affecting plant life, it's affecting our ozone, we're destroying, right? The removal of biodiversity in general I think we can probably come to a pretty easy conclusion that is detrimental to our planet in the big picture, right? Maybe not in the small picture, but in the big picture, there's lots of things being affected. So what does this have to do with flavor? What does this have to do with flavor saving the planet, right? Well, this is where we go down to flavor diversity. So when I talk about flavor diversity, right, let's just talk about it from the very simplest terms of what you experience on your sense of taste, what you're experiencing on your taste buds, right? Even if you don't agree that flavor equals nutrition, look at it from the simple standpoint of pleasure. If you eat combinations of flavors and let's say you go to a delicious restaurant where a chef knows how to create, flavors that are well balanced. You put that bite in your mouth and you're like, wow, I don't know what this is, but this is really delicious. And you might not be thinking, but you probably aren't, because we're not having these conversations around, what flavor actually translates to. But even from a pleasure standpoint, the more varied food is as you're eating it, the more enjoyable it is, right? That's step one, the pleasure factor of diversity in a bite of food. So let's see, what can I come up with? From a simplest, most basic standpoint, take a French fry that's, it's a potato with salt on it. It's got a little crispy texture to it, and you want to dip it in a sweet ketchup. So then you're getting salty, you're getting sweet, you're getting the kind of umami flavor in the potato. And people love that, right? So that's just like the most simplest basic example of, mixing up your flavors, making it more interesting. But let's go deeper than a French fry and ketchup, right? Let's look at flavor diversity in fruits and vegetables. So let's look at the piece of fruit itself, or the piece of food that you're growing. I use apple a lot as an example. So an apple is grown, right? An apple in and of itself, when it's grown and is delicious and healthy and comes off of the tree, it's sweet, it's sour, it's bitter. The skin is bitter, right? And there's sweetness and there's sour in the actual apple itself. So taking a bite of an apple with the skin intact, you're getting this variety of flavor, right? If we take that back to the tomato that's been shipped across the grocery store, across the country to stay nice and hard and shiny and bright in the grocery store, and you take a bite of that and there's no really flavor to it, you have to start asking yourself, well, why is this? What is this? What is it about the lack of diversity in that tomato that isn't present anymore, right? So there's the aspect of why doesn't food have the diversity of flavor anymore? And if we go back to the conversation I just had about there's lack of diversity in the soil, there's a pretty good correlation there. But let's talk about the flavor in your own body, right? So when we start to understand what the 5 categories of flavor should represent nutritionally, right? So there's 5 categories of flavor, and we haven't gone into depth in this too much yet, but we will. So the 5 categories of flavor are salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. So in the very basic of terms, let's assume that what I'm presenting out there right now is truth. Okay, so when you're getting something sweet, that's an energetic support, right? That's when you need energy. That sweetness represents energy for your body. Salty, if you're eating real true salts and getting that salty flavor, there's a mineral support that comes with the right salts, right? The right salty flavor. And I'm not talking about the ingredient of salt, I'm talking about saltiness in food. Salty, sweet, sour. Sour is acidic, right? So acidic, if you think about what acidic represents in your body, it's digestive support, right? So acidic supports digestion. Bitter is medicinal. Bitter is detoxifying. Simple as anything. So anything that's bitter has that supportive aspect to it. Umami is protein. We all know protein is muscle building, right? This is the rebuilding of your body. This is the rebuilding of cells. So with those 5 categories in place, you can imagine when you diversify that on your plate, you're also diversifying the support that your body is getting. So flavor diversity, not only is it more pleasurable to experience when you're eating it, it's more supportive of our bodies. it's such a beautiful way of looking at how pleasure can help save the earth. It's really through flavor, like in my eyes, call me crazy if you want, but I love it. I love the connection between us as humans having this innate ability to experience flavor, flavor being this pathway to detecting nutrition. And then that, right, us demanding more flavor and seeing the connection between the biodiversity of the flavors and the biodiversity of the soils that it needs to grow in. It's a beautiful way to use pleasure to keep the conversation going about how our food should be grown.